This was the beginning of my new campaign against the dark passenger. Armed with nothing but a social worker, case manager, therapist, psychiatrist, meds, and my own being.
We interrupt you from this podcast to bring you this important message. This podcast is not for children. There's occasional use of explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
This beat was made by the 21st century schizoid man. Now, enjoy the podcast.
My expectations were not too high, even with these tools at my disposal. To this day, I've been through a multitude of different types of treatment and haven't been able to identify the absolute trigger of my relapses. Unfortunately, this rings true for many victims of mental boundaries. First, we highlight failed medicinal treatments. It all started with Zyprexa. The prescription process went a little something like this. At the time, I was in high school, and we would refer to my doctor as Dr. Sal.
Hey, how you doing? Your file says you've recently left the juvenile detention center.
I sighed, knowing this would forever be a blemish on my life story, and said yes, but I'm okay now. I think this will be a short-term consultation.
Oh, so you go to UAD Jesuit High School? Well, you must be pretty sharp. However, based on your file, I think it's best to commit you to long-term treatment, and I'm going to start you off on Zyprexa.
I say to him, I thought this process entailed more talking than an actual medical regimen.
Your case seems to be more severe than most at your age, so we will have to adopt a more strict routine. I'm going to see you twice a week, and you must take your prescription as prescribed.
Well, this marked the beginning of an uphill battle with a damning adversary, my very own dark passenger. At first, the side effects showed in a way that agreed with me. In the past, I attempted bulking and putting on pounds, but nothing worked toward the effort of looking more muscular. My routine of lifting weights began in middle school, but now a junior in high school, the side effect of weight gain was extremely positive. My peers at school joked that I was on steroids. I'm really not sure if they believed me to be taking steroids or just said this in jest. Either way, my confidence shot through the roof. They joked that I was getting cocky physically and figuratively. On the negative end of side effects came the twitching. To this day, I still twitch regularly, as this proves as a common theme amongst antipsychotic meds. Then came the risperidone. I had switched doctors due to insurance coverage, and my issues persisted. This was around the time of the coma I had mentioned in previous episodes, and the treatment of electroconvulsive therapy. My new doctor, we will call him Dr. K, was not very helpful. He held short appointments and expressed no hope for my recovery.
Okay, let's make this appointment really fast, okay?
He said this almost every appointment. I know doctors are busy, but consistency paired with speed is simply an overnight solution. With Dr. Sal, the appointments were too long, and now Dr. K's appointments were too fast. I think my longest appointment with him was around 10 minutes, and it ended up in a trip to the hospital. I found myself absorbed by the Goldilocks principle. He prescribed risperidone. The side effects that I noticed were weight gain, still a positive, twitching, still a negative, and excessive drooling, a definite negative. These side effects were difficult to conceal, and at that point, I was not ready to expose the passenger to the world. The best appointments I had with Dr. K were the times where he reduced my dosages, and this was very rare. Next was Dr. Gupta.
Like Sanjay?
No. Even though Dr. Sanjay Gupta was one of my idols back when I wanted to be a doctor. But anyways, my treatment under him would persist on and off for the next 3 years. It was 2013, and I had just left college as per my illness. My appointments with Dr. Gupta were more positive and strenuous. I felt as if he actually wanted me to succeed, instead of just seeing me for a paycheck. He was humorous, supportive, and took an active role in my treatment. By now, I'd realized my issues were not so short-term. So I guess you could say this chapter was the right temperature in terms of the Goldilocks principle. My treatment under him began after my first hospitalization at the hospital then known as Southfield Providence. The staff at this hospital was by far the best in terms of patient care. The mental health technicians were friendly, attentive, and supportive of the patient. My first prescription here was paliperidone. My side effects were weight gain, tiredness, dry mouth, and twitching, or Parkinsonians. In terms of effectiveness, this was by far the best thus far. It was an injection, which meant I didn't have to take oral meds every day. Honestly, the best part of it was the almost sedative effect it achieved. In terms of life, it made me numb. While this sounds negative, it seemed only right at the time, as most of my waking hours remained under the control of the dark passenger. Soon I started to see Dr. Gupta at his office. We arrived in Livonia, Michigan for my appointment. The building seemed plain, just a normal metropolitan 2-story establishment. We entered through the main entrance and nothing appeared out of the ordinary. Separate offices here and there and a waiting room on the second floor. I followed my mother to the second floor and opened the door to the side of about 15 other patients. Into the lobby we went, sitting uncomfortably in the chairs his office offered. The dark passenger had been inactive for about a month. It was 2014, and I knew, and it knew, we were due for another appearance.
Look how many women there are. Do you know why they're here?
Yes, they need medical help. Just like me. And as do the other couple of men that are also here.
No. They are Dr. Gupta's mistresses.
By now, I probably should have realized that the passenger would not allow this to be a typical or an average visit. However, I exercised a great deal of optimism and caution as life presently progressed in a fairly routine manner. I slept through most of the day and attended therapy sessions faithfully. My mother had forgotten to sign me in. She walked to the front desk and signed in.
Look at the TV. Do you know why it's on the Home Improvement channel? It's because all of his mistresses are planning their futures with him. And guess how he got to this level in his career? It was by lying.
No, not this time. No, you don't. I'm not listening. The front desk calls my name.
Mayfie, Dr. Gupta will see you now.
I stand up with my mother and walk through the halls to his office. We knock on the door. He answers. We enter, sit down, and thus begins my appointment.
How are you, Mayfie?
I think to myself, when will they ever get my name right?
Just look at his degrees on the wall. Look, from Michigan State University. Michigan State doesn't even have an MD program.
Again to myself, I think you're right. I've researched all the medical schools in Michigan, and I don't ever recall Michigan State as one of the options. I was of course wrong, yet the passenger didn't care.
Call him out.
I get defensive. Why do I even have to be here if you're not a real doctor? Michigan State doesn't even have a medical program. Even now, I grit my teeth at this memory and say to myself, why did I do that? A question every mentally bound person utters to themselves in the most solitary yet abundant of moments. My mother looks at me in shock and says, "No, Moff, what are you saying?" I'm not sure she believes that this really occurred. Dr. Gupta responds,
I can assure you, I attended school and finished with a board-certified medical degree. Don't you consider that to be your dream also? That's why I'm here. I want you to succeed.
You just printed out those degrees and framed them. Hey, at least I'm not as crazy as those people that still believe Trump won the election. I guess he knew what time it was. Time for an adjustment of my meds. He prescribed me flufenazine, and it did absolutely nothing for me. Another hospital admission was obviously in order. Another session of useless inpatient care. I would attend therapy sessions in the morning. The process normally occurred like this.
Hello, group. Today, our focus is going to be on cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. We want to identify the triggers and coping mechanisms that pertain exclusively to you. First, I want to ask what brings you here.
I was no longer the outlier in this group. In fact, I might have been an outlier in terms of how often I had undergone inpatient care. This was not the Juve.
You're really gonna keep with this Juve name, huh?
And I did have a case of the crazies. The group responded.
Substance abuse,
Exhaustion.
failure to keep up with meds, voices, and so on and so forth.
Unfortunately, like so many others, I kept my real issues to myself. I didn't think anything they tried would help. My response was the voices.
Well, what do we do when we feel a relapse coming on, group?
Hey, you're not a fucking kid. Get up and go back to your room.
I stand up, not of my own accord, of course. Not sure what I'm doing as the passenger takes control. My eyes dart around the room in embarrassment. Was I progressing, staying stagnant, or regressing? I asked myself this question many a time, yet only now can I officially say that my life is on the up and up. I've been out of the hospital for the longest time since high school. The hospitalization ended and Dr. Gupta enrolled me in the hospital partial program, or day program, and he prescribed me Lexapro. Now I was a real regular, doubting treatment yet still participating. They had me attending sessions like I was in school, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. They forced me to sit through boring discussions of how to cope. I anticipated nothing but more trouble to come. They even implemented yoga. My flexibility actually trended negatively as I progressed through their sessions. The only highlight I remember was the food, which the hospital provided a $5 pass for. Even though $5 was free, it did not cover enough for an actually satisfying meal. Good food, though. Through all my trips to the hospital, I never came to understand the problems people attach to hospital food. The partial program ended, and soon my therapy with Easter seals would begin. Earlier, I started with this, I know, yet I wanted to highlight the other prescriptions I received prior to Easter seals. After my intake with Lisa, my Easter seals program officially started with the therapist who we will call Tanya.
Hello, Muff. I'm Tanya.
Blah, blah, blah. If you listen to me more, you wouldn't have to sit through moments like this.
Excuse me, are you paying attention?
Oh, I'm sorry, the voices were talking to me again.
Well, hopefully we can work through this. You know what I want you to do? Speak positive thoughts and talk in the affirmative.
More of this therapeutic bullshit. Do they actually think this works?
I say to myself, this will work. To be honest, I was desperate, so I hung on to every word the therapist said.
The first thing I want you to realize is that the voices cannot control you. You're in control, and this is your life. How do you want to live, Muff?
I want to graduate, and I want to control my own life.
What are the 3 traits you possess that may help you take control?
All I can think of is my intelligence. As I say this, I shrug. I'm not one to go on about myself.
Can you think of any others?
No.
How about your resilience? You bounce back every time you find yourself in a rut.
I chuckle myself and think, if she thinks this equals bouncing back, then curing my mental illness must parallel the resurrection. I reply, yeah, I guess you're right about that.
Also, you got some jokes, and your sense of humor seems like one of your selling points. Laughing through the pain always stands as a great coping mechanism.
Thank you, that's one quality I really did not know I had. In retrospect, I suppose one would call this as a pleasant impression, unlike the previous ones listed before.
This is Catwoman. She's really deceptive, so be careful.
Look, Catwoman represents a figure in a fictional universe, and I cannot trust you because you're always drumming up trouble.
Suit yourself. At least I make things more fun than your false reality.
My reality is not false. Psychosis is not fun, and I would suit myself if you would let me. This initiated the start of a long and draining cycle. Maintaining treatment with meds and therapy, lying about taking meds, relapse, hospitalization, follow-up physicals with the family doctor, therapy meetings, psychiatrist prescriptions, coping, rinse, and repeat. My history of medications read something along the lines of, risperidone, Zyprexa, flufenazine, paliperidone, quetiapine, clozapine, trazodone, aripiprazole, haloperidol, Lexapro, and possibly more. Each of these came with their side effects. Although they helped temporarily, none of them were the quote-unquote silver bullet. One thing about mental illness is that medicine usually addresses the issue by numbing the patient. What people don't realize is that this does not stop the voices. They're still there with me every day, loud as can be, or at least slightly muffled. These are just the ones I recount interactions with. The next impression did not occur initially, but it left a lasting imprint, and in fact matched memories of the earlier mentioned Dr. Gupta event. I had just received a call from an IT company for an interview. Since my first withdrawal from school, I removed myself entirely from the professional world. Yes, I returned to school for a year, but prior to and after this, I neglected my adult career efforts. I felt optimistic about my interview, yet the passenger planned otherwise.
Let's go, Marv. Lateness is ugly for any job.
She said this as she rushed for the car. I fixed a chicken salad sandwich, and out the door I went.
Are you ready for the interview?
I practiced it multiple times with Mayo. I'm overprepared.
I hope so.
After driving about 30 minutes, we arrive and she says,
Good luck.
Hey. No interview.
I think to myself, what now? This chance interview, it appears as a godsend. And here I am fighting with what some may call a chemical imbalance in my brain. Well, folks, a chemical imbalance or not, it's still extremely obvious. I say to my mom, I don't think I can do this.
What? You are right here?
The voices refuse the interview.
Let's go to Easter Seal.
She calls the Easter Seal's office and schedules an immediate appointment with Dr. George. We drive to the office. The whole time my mother anxiously asks me questions about my health. Are you still on your medicine? Is this interview a trigger? Do you think you can still work? Soon we arrive at the office and sign in. Dr. George comes to get us.
Hey, Muff, I hear you skipped a job interview. You worked so hard for it. Is there a problem?
Call the police. This whole organization is a scam. They don't even possess the proper certification.
Where are your certifications? Everyone trades glances in the room, from my social worker, my doctor, my mother, to me. Everyone frantic with confusion. This place is bogus. I'm calling the police. I pick up my phone and dial 911.
911, what's your emergency?
You say you'd like to report a fraudulent healthcare facility.
I'd like to report a fraudulent healthcare facility.
Give me the phone.
She reaches for my phone and I dodge her hands. I start to take pictures of the office and threaten to send them to the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I open my email account and send the pictures to Nami. In the pictures are photos of certificates and degrees that I claim is falsified, just like Dr. Gupta. Then the passenger reminds me that this organization operates under the guise of a nonprofit, but in fact exists as the Justice League. If you are unfamiliar with this organization, then I describe it as a fictional organization of superheroes.
The League has been compromised. The culprit, evil bunnies.
The bunnies or rabbits, to the passenger, retain good and evil parts of their population. The good bunnies were the ones that humans left alone. Instead of playing with humans, they govern the animation world, aka bunny holes or covens.
What?
The
Hey,
evil
I'm sorry to laugh at your stupid. What? Carry on, man. Carry on.
The evil ones were known as parademons to the Justice League. In the Justice League movie, they existed as bat-like creatures, the size of a vulture. I was checked out, so everything the passenger said had no filter.
I'm gonna call Steve, his case manager.
I'm calling T-Mobile to shut down your service.
They call the respective parties. I continue walking around the office taking pictures.
The bunnies have a goal. They get stronger when their eyes get caught on a circuit with other bunnies. Follow their eyes because they're quite shifty. When you follow the path of their eyes, they can no longer communicate. Look, it's Steve.
Hey, Maf, why do you have your phone out? Come with me.
I get up and say, good. If I take more pictures, that only mounts the proof of all this fraud. I follow him and he continues complaining about the whole ordeal.
You've been doing so good lately, and now I find that you've jeopardized your job interview. Come on, man.
I resume taking pictures, and this time I snap a picture of him.
Put the damn camera away. Damn.
Police never came. Nami never responded. The pictures didn't prove a damn thing. The only thing that was positively confirmed was that another hospitalization remained necessary.
Yeah.